Thank you. I always know on Saturday it was a good party the night before, so thank you for everyone who has survived that and made it here. Yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about the positive potential of exponential technologies. We also face a different threat environment now. 11 years ago, war came to Europe, and 3 years ago it got even worse. And we face the question of, can we find what it takes to show solidarity, to defend our allies, and to stop the spread of the types of things we've seen on the eastern borders of Europe. In that 11 years, the context has also changed. Because of technology, we now have AI systems that can process enormous amounts of information, try to peer through the fog of war. The nature of cyber attacks, as we've heard many times in the last 2 days, has changed, expanded. We see cyber physical attacks as well. And of course, we've witnessed the arrival of a brand new type of weaponry being used at scale, which are drones. So for our discussion today, from the front lines defending Europe, I'm really excited about the group we've brought together. We have Giedrimas Jeglinskas, who was an Assistant Secretary General at NATO and is now chairs the National Security Committee in Lithuania's parliament. He has been instrumental in helping people in the defense establishment rethink what the nature of the threat is today. We have Kadi Silde, who is the Director of European Engagement for Helsing, which is a startup, growing very, very quickly, defense company based around these types of technologies. And we'll open with a discussion from Jack de Santis, who volunteered as a foreign fighter in Ukraine's military and served in the front lines as a drone pilot, and he's now building off that experience with a new defense startup. So I will ask Jack to come on and talk to us for a few minutes. Thank you, Jack. Let me just make sure you have there you go.
Yeah. So I've been given the task to summarize almost 3 years of wartime frontline technology development and given less than 5 minutes to do it, so please bear with me. So that's how we started. As Azeem said, I went there to volunteer in 2022 when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started. I joined a group of other foreign volunteers called the Dark Angels. And I remember coming to Zaporizhia, meeting the commander of the 28th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, who just told us, here are some Kalashnikovs, here are some Javelin anti-tank missiles, this is what we have. Russian army, that way, good luck, see you tomorrow. And yeah, fast forward as things happen on the battlefield, lots of battlefield lessons learned. I'm now the founder of Omira systems. We're building counter-electronic warfare technology, and we're already working with the Pentagon. The two-star general you see here, it's Major General Edward Vaughan, Executive Director, Joint Rapid Acquisition Cell, and the heads of the Ukrainian military. And yeah, we went from like 1 year to the next, from battlefield to the Pentagon. Things tend to happen very, very quickly in Ukraine. A word on drone technologies, which have definitely been a highlight of this war. In 2022, we were all mainly using DJI drones. There was very little custom military budget drone development, so we were using what was available off the shelf. In 2023, we have seen FPV drones become more prevalent. And for those of you who are not familiar with the topic, FPV drones, like what I was holding in my hand in the picture on the first slide, those are drones that you strap an explosive to and then you like fly it into a target. It can take out an entire tank with a single drone that costs less than $1,000. By 2024, the drone industry in Ukraine, Europe, and in the US had quite picked up, and there were very little DJI drones still being used on the battlefield. As of today, between Ukraine, Europe, and the US, we have more than 4,000 startups working on drone technologies and building drones of some kind. And the next trend that we are seeing now for 2025, it's instead of what some predicted, that AI would take over and full autonomy would take over, we are seeing Ukrainians start deploying drones that are actually controlled by cable. So there is like a 10, 15 kilometer optic fiber wire from the controller to the drone because the radio spectrum is too congested and it's almost impossible to work over like radio frequencies anymore in Ukraine. Which brings it to my next point. One of the harshest lessons for allies and NATO and the Ukrainians has been electronic warfare. Russia has been working very hard to develop those capabilities. And all of our systems on the NATO side depend on GPS and radio guidance and communication and coordination between troops in real time. And this is a topic that it's not getting nearly enough attention, but it is really like one of the most critical aspects on the battlefield, I can tell you as a on-the-ground warfighter. And as we're seeing like this like exponential growth and things happening drastically faster, it's not just about technology. The industry, it's also moving a lot faster. Those things would have been unimaginable 3 years ago to have a pre-seed startup working with a joint rapid acquisition cell at the Pentagon, or to have Kiev formally requesting the technology from a startup from their defense partners. And yeah, it all goes to say about how quick things move. But there is still a lot that needs to be done. There is still a lot left and a lot of room for improvement. And the war, it's not over, and we still got to keep working. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Great. Why don't you come and take this middle seat?
Yeah.
So I'd love to call Kadi and Giedrimas up on the stage. Kadi, if you can be here, I'll come and shake your hand. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, Azeem.
Thank you. Oh, I'm still controlling the controller. If somebody wants to stop me messing things up, that would be a great stage. Thank you so much, Jack, for sharing that that story. And you had 14 hours of flying experience and 1,400 hours of flying experience in the FPV drones, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Maybe, Kadi, if I could come to you first from the perspective of being in charge of the eastern flank for Helsing, which for a tech company is a new way to divide the world. It's no longer EMEA and APAC and so on. It's eastern flank. What are you seeing? How much of Jack's story do you also recognize in the data that you're able to see through Helsing systems?
Yep. First of all, thanks, Jack, for that and for all your efforts. We had in Helsing a similar story. So we went into Ukraine very early on, and we just went there. We said, "Listen, we'll help you in any way. Just tell us what we can do." We started with, working with legacy systems, adding our AI solutions on it to make them more effective, but pretty quickly realized one thing is Ukraine will not win by amassing more legacy systems. They will always be outnumbered. I'll bring you, and Europe will always be outnumbered. So I'll bring you two examples. You people in Germany, you're aware of, the Leopard tank, obviously. Russia has since 2022 lost more Leopard tanks than all of Leopard 2 users in Europe have in their arsenals. And the point I'm trying to make is not that Russia has lost a lot of tanks and is now weak, but is able to regenerate, and we will always have a disadvantage when it comes to legacy systems. Now, what happened then, as Jack said, is the Ukrainians very, very smartly understood we have cheaper mass-producible systems that we can produce at scale that can have the same effect. And essentially, that's what we are seeing. What we are, we're an AI company, which can mean anything and everything, right? But what we're seeing is we need to redefine mass. And what we're working on is precise, mass-producible, cheap mass that delivers the same effect that legacy systems, or actually most of the time a better effect than legacy systems.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, Giedrimas, if I come to you, we hear the complexity of this situation, the complexity of the threat, the dynamism of the threat. But sometimes the thing that I hear is, but this particular threat will kind of stop where it is if we do a deal. You sat in NATO, you now sit in Lithuania.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, let me just overnight, just give you a quote from a press release that we received. Overnight, there were 4 ballistic rockets launched, Iskander-M, at Kiev, 39 Shahed drones, 4 people died, 3 injured. Now that's Kiev. Kiev, beautiful city. War is happening. War is real. We can hide from it. We can ignore it. We can sort of voice concern. But if we don't do anything about it, this threat is not going to go away. I think it's very clear, both from a revanchist Russia's position and also through its cooperation with China, Iran, North Korea, that we're in a different kind of world. Even if we think that U.S. hegemonic-centric world, the international rules-based order that we're kind of been used to for the past 35 years has been disadvantaged somehow, then think about a different kind of world. And the multipolarity is probably going to be much more volatile, and our whole lives will change. If we allow Russian victory to take place, this is going to have massive impact on everything, on everyday life. It's no doubt, because it will embolden autocrats like Xi Jinping, and embolden other sort of quartet of chaos, I call it. So it's very real, and we have to, the starting line, the starting point is, can our political leaders, together with society, really grasp that? And I think we are. We're in the very East. We grasp that. And we kind of raised our defense spending now to close to 5.5% yesterday's decision. Now, but we need to grasp and start investing. The top line, before we go into whether it's legacy tech or new tech, the top line, the defense spending needs to increase. We have been ignoring it for the past 35 years through the whole end of history sort of argument, but it's a serious situation, and we need to really wake up to this reality.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's turn to the questions of innovation, right? We're going to go through a whole series of issues, but I want to talk to the question of the innovation, the rate of innovation. And maybe, Jack, could you give an example of the tightness of the innovation loop that you actually faced in the field, the sense of what changed and how you responded and what resources you had to respond?
Yeah. So to make the best example about speed and how fast things move on the battlefield, I know cases where a friend of mine was in the Ukrainian military intelligence. He went to the southern city of Kherson to speak with the frontline troops there and to assess the situation. And they gave him an overview and a report of how things are here. He didn't even manage to get back to Kiev, which is an 8 hours drive. They already called him to say, hey, the Russians have changed this. Everything I told you, it's now outdated. And we have also seen soldiers who have been injured, who have been sent back to hospital and then rehabilitation, and they return to the front 8, 9 months later. And we'll have to go through complete retraining, because the way drone warfare is done and the way the technology is being used, it's so different. After 8, 9 months, they need to go back to training before redeploying.
I mean, that is an incredible cognitive and psychological load to add to already extreme physiological, psychological load of war. Right. So let's look at that innovation loop. And Giedrimas, one of the key concepts that comes out of warfighting, which startups have picked up, is called the OODA loop. You know, observe, orient, decide, and act. John Boyd from the Vietnam era U.S. Air Force officer. When you think of this, having been in the procurement space as well, and you think about innovation, how do we think about what this OODA loop now looks like and what the implications are?
Well, I think I fully agree with Jack. So the OODA loop on the battlefield, and I think different products, different sectors is probably different, but in general, when you develop a drone as some sort of advantage, in 2 weeks, the Russians have it, and in 3 weeks, they have a response, and you no longer have an advantage, and then you kind of start over again. That tells you that kind of the rate of innovation that's happening through the experience on the battlefield, because it's, again, it's an existential threat for the Ukrainians. They need to do it. They have their backs on the wall, at the wall, so you have to innovate. So you're forced to rethink things much faster. Now, I think it would be quite almost naive to think that we can do it in 3 weeks. Look at our procurement, whether it's in Germany or US or Lithuania or anywhere. It takes months and months and years, sometimes a decade if it's a big platform. How do we get our heads out of that sand and start thinking more innovatively, just more efficiently, really? And that's, I think, Ukraine has given us a great example that we need to start looking at it. But it's a massive challenge because, we're at peace. We live in cafes in Munich are full, in Vilnius, Warsaw, or DC. Life is good. We don't see it. So what's going to make us to make these changes?
Kadi, your perspective.
I wanted to come on that, in on that. I mean, there's so much to learn from Ukraine. Well, I think one of the main things is the way capabilities have been delivered to Ukraine, which is you take something, you give it in the hands of end users, you iterate, you make it better. Now, how the West does it is we have 500 pages of requirements. Each country has their own. You work for 3 years to get a capability in, and of course, it's going to be yesterday's capability. So we need to change that and shift the way we procure, that it's not a, big, expensive system that's been developed for 10 years.
Yeah, so we have to shift the way we procure in order to meet the demands of this tighter OODA loop and the innovation rate that Jack discussed. How do you actually, in reality, go about doing that? There are lots of reasons why, there are lots of good reasons perhaps why military procurement in peacetime is a slow process. So in peacetime, what's the change that you make? Maybe we'll go to Giedrimas, come to Kadi after that.
Yeah, I think there are sort of these brave individuals within each system. We've seen DIU sort of emerge through kind of Pentagon system. Again,
DIU is?
The Defense Innovation Unit, which is like an innovative unit just next to the Secretary of Defense. Again, if you read the book Unit X and Raj Shah, who's written it, it took years to kind of launch it. Again, it takes time. But I think, first of all, it starts with political will and in a bravery, of really politicians to really take that risk, take that procurement, development, buying risk from the hands of the bureaucrats and say, look, we have to do it faster. I'll take the risk. But let's get through that. Now, I've heard examples when we buy drones and other high tech for Ukraine, but they are in a warehouse. They sit in a warehouse for months because the whole accounting aspect is just it's ridiculous. But we're in that kind of world that we need to start thinking differently. And I think but without a political risk taking, the bureaucrats will not act. That's just normal until the sort of big war comes to our place.
Well, until the big war. Although Kadi, I mean, Helsing is a new defense contractor. And defense contracting is a business which is highly concentrated in a handful of what are known as primes, huge companies. How did Helsing break through that? I don't want to call it a glass ceiling. It's more like a ceiling of grift and paperwork and designed by Kafka. But how did you break through it?
Yeah. So. I mean, just to make clear, we still work with traditional defense primes, and you need to do that because if we need to go to a conflict tomorrow, like 80% of the systems will still be legacy systems, right? So what we need to do two things. We need to make existing systems better, which we are doing, working with companies like Saab, like Airbus. But then, again, as I said in the beginning, it's not enough because the wartime economy right now is in the favor of the Russians because we are spending millions of dollars. We have $1 million missiles taking out, 30K drones, right? And the Russians think they can outweight us, basically, in a conflict, right? At some point, we'll spend too much money. So what we need to do is we need to have an ability, and that's what we're delivering, to take out million or billion dollar euro systems with systems that cost, 20, 30, 50K, whatever.
Right. I think that's an important dynamic, and I maybe just contextualize, some of that. The Ukrainians, have an annual capacity of about 4 million new drones a year, according to some reports. Monthly losses of drones runs into the tens of thousands. In another theater of war, which is the Gulf by Yemen, the Houthis have been able to overwhelm the US Navy, and effectively it has had to, the most powerful Navy in the world, retrench because they fire $30,000 drones in large numbers at these ships, which are shot down by $3 million missiles. And you run out of those missiles, PDQ, and it takes pretty damn quickly, and it takes a very long time to procure them. So then we come to, what happens in traditional industries is we get startups. That Helsing is a great example, who can work more quickly and more nimbly. You are building a startup in this space. And so, just a two-layer question. The first is very briefly, what is Omira doing? And the second is, what have you found about the experience of trying to bringing this innovation to market? And you've obviously had some success with the Pentagon already.
Yeah. So the first part, what we do, we are trying to counter electronic warfare and jamming. We're building new radio technology. It's a completely new concept of how to do radio broadcasting that can work around jamming, maintaining communication between troops and systems on the battlefield. And then we are also building another solution that's about hardware and AI software, that it's a complete electromagnetic spectrum battle management system, because if you go to the battlefield and you look at the radio spectrum and what is happening, there is like millions of things happening every second. It's impossible for a human to sort through all of that in real time. So we're building an AI that can do that and allows us to execute electromagnetic spectrum warfare maneuvers in like milliseconds, which is impossible for any human to do. Some of the biggest challenges we found, for example, we had Wise close our bank account because we are a defense company and defense bad.
And Wise is an Estonian company.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll email the Wise guys. Don't worry, we'll do that.
Yeah. A lot of the investors we spoke with, they sensed this is something significant, but when they tried to find independent experts to validate our claims, they just couldn't find anybody or found like really poor quality experts. It's been a long and tough journey along every step of the way, but like we said, when you're with your back against the wall and with what I've seen on the battlefield, I've watched my friends die because due to electronic warfare, we couldn't do anything about it. I knew we have to build this and persevered relentlessly. And now we are working with the Pentagon, US Warfighter Critical Capability 2025. It was definitely not easy. A lot of things could have made it easier and faster for us.
Yeah, I mean it's a very, very visceral story. I think that you've shared with us, and unfortunately those things move faster than the systems around them. Yeah. We've got a few minutes left, and Kadi, I wanted to ask you about what the role of people like us in this room is in terms of the levers that we have for the mechanism of change. Yeah. What can people do?
Yeah. So I guess it's just to understand that we're running out of time. And sitting here, sometimes it might seem like war is far away. There might be some sort of a ceasefire, but the reality is Russia has put their economy on a war footing. Even if they stop or let's say freeze the conflict in Ukraine, these men fighting for Russia and the industry driving this is not going to be shut down. This is going to be directed towards the borders of countries like me. What we're seeing right now already, and you can look at the sort of Christmas surprise that we received from Russia this December, 25th of December, with the power electricity cable being cut in the Baltic Sea, which coincidentally was just before we are about to desynchronize from the Russian electricity grid. Mm-hmm. People call it hybrid, war, whatever, but hybrid is such a cuddly word, right?
Right.
It's like, but this is state-sponsored terrorism, and this is just the first step. So my message is, it might seem like it's far away. It's, the reason why Lithuania is raising their defense budget to 5 or 6% of GDP, like Cold War levels, is not because they have nowhere else to put the money. There is actual like, fear in people. I recommend reading Secretary General Rutte's remarks in the European Parliament earlier this week, where he basically said, yes, we're sort of safe now, but if we keep on like this, we're not going to be safe in 4 or 5 years. And he recommended that if we stay like that, you do either of two things. Either you brush up your Russian or you go to New Zealand. And he's not a person who's known for being overly dramatic,
absolutely.
right? He's a pragmatic
Pretty
Dutch
even.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely, pragmatic Dutch guy. Well, New Zealand is quite nice in January, I hear. Now, Giedrimas, on Monday, in Washington, D.C., there's something changes. Is that going to help this situation or not?
Now, bear with me. I think now I'm going to quote my friend H.R. McMaster, who had advised Donald.
So H.R. McMaster
is a former national security advisor to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump will be a tremendous source of stability geopolitically in the next 4 years. Now, by that, I mean that the geopolitical sort of grand game that we're in will be subdued in a way that in that White House we have a person who's feared by the autocrats, and that's good for the world. I think again, America leads the world in defense, in economy, in dynamism. There's so many great things about America, despite all the challenges, and we need America that's strong, and it's led by a person, unfortunately, that needs to be feared by President Xi, by Putin, by the North Korean regime, by Iran, and that's a good thing. We have this change. I think there's a new hope, and I think if we talk to the Ukrainian people as well, the policy making or regular people or people on the field, in the battlefield, there's sort of a hope. There's sort of hope that, you know what, something can happen. And I think our role as Europeans is to work with the new administration, find those paths of commonality, and really use these opportunities to really rebuild. Peace through strength. That's the Ronald Reagan's words. And another thing that came from Ronald Reagan's times, we win, they lose. And by we, I think we stick together with America. And despite some rhetoric, react to what Donald Trump does, not what he says. And I think in the first administration, we had worked very closely with their administration, and it's been some tremendous successes there. So I'm extremely hopeful that we're entering a new phase, hopefully with a lot more stability. But we need to win.
Thank you. I know we are out of time, but you want to make one short comment, Jack, so I'll let you quickly come in.
So as somebody who has spent a lot of time in Ukraine, not just with the military, but also with regular Ukrainian folk, I can say one thing: they are tired of the war. They want the war to end. More than 50% of Ukrainian people would be willing to give up the currently occupied territories just to end the war tomorrow. And they are running out of men. The military is running out of manpower. Ukraine absolutely could not have continued another 4 years of how things were going under Biden.
Yeah. With that sobering note, thank you very much to our panel. Thank you, Jack, for everything you've done. Thank you.